Good afternoon, class. Today we're going to talk about dissociation and the chemical formula for acids and bases. Let's first talk about the chemical formula for acids or bases. There are two simple rules for us to follow. Acids always have a chemical formula that starts with H. That's right, it starts with hydrogen. All acids start with hydrogen. All bases start with, I made a mistake. Bases don't start with, bases end with OH, or they end with hydroxide. This is the simple rule that we have for acids and bases. So if I were to have a chemical formula, perhaps something that looked like this, HCl, well, I know since it starts with H, I know that this is an acid. Or if I had something like NaOH, since I know it ends with OH, I see that this is a base. So that's what's important about the chemical formula. We're going to use that in a little bit. Let's talk about dissociation. Dissociation is what makes acids and bases actually acids and bases. So what is dissociation? Dissociation is a reversible process that occurs when an ionic compound splits, or the word we use is dissociates, into its ions when it's dissolved into water. So if I chose any old ionic compound, maybe I'm choosing some sodium chloride, and I was to take this sodium chloride and I have to throw it into this beaker of water. What it would do is it would dissociate, it would dissolve, and it would split up into its pieces. It would split up into a Na plus ion, and it would split up into a Cl minus ion. It has dissociated. They're separate. They can move around and they can actually begin reacting with other things. And you might be like, Mr. Westgard, what is the reversible part of it? What happens? I was like, well, if I took some time and if I chose to maybe evaporate all of that water, the water would be leaving, but eventually I'd be left with sodium and chlorine left. But they would stick together when the last of the water is gone, so I'd get NaCl back together. That's what it means by it's reversible. So the key here is dissociation is all about splitting apart the ions when they get into water. So let's see what happens when an acid dissociates. So we're going to choose an acid. We're going to choose the previous example, hydrochloric acid. I'm going to throw hydrochloric acid into this water. I'm going to be left with some H pluses, and there's going to be some Cl minuses floating around. And I could even have multiple chemicals or multiple compounds of hydrochloric acid thrown in there for more H pluses and more Cl minuses. Right? Now, what makes this an acid? Remember what we talked about with acids is they are on the pH scale. Taking a look, there are all these extra H's sitting around in water now. If there's all these extra H's, that means that there are a lot of H's, and we measure our pH scale, that's going to bring the pH down closer to 0. Why does more H's make a smaller number? It's because it's a negative logarithm. That requires some grade 12 math for us to work around, so if you don't understand why that occurs, it's okay. Don't sweat it. Just remember, more H's that are sitting in water make it more acidic. And so the dissociation, allowing that free H, allowing the hydrochloric acid to split into H's, makes the solution acidic. What's going to happen when you put a base in some water? Well, using the previous example of the thing that we said was a base, some sodium hydroxide, if I were to throw that into the water, I'd be left with sodium plus ions and some hydroxide ions. And as before, I can throw in multiples, right? So maybe I'm going to throw in 2 chemicals. Now looking at this, I don't have extra H's. And remember how I said in the previous video how H and OH combine to make water? Well, if I have OH, it's like I took the hydrogens away from some waters. That's kind of how the pH scale looks at it. It says, oh no, there are not enough H's for all of the oxygens to make enough waters. I now have some hydroxide ions floating around. That's what makes it a base. So, how do acids and bases work? It's all about dissociation. Acids dissociate and give away H's. Bases dissociate and give away OHs, which act like having not enough H's, having not enough hydrogen. That's what makes an acid, and that's what makes a base, this process of dissociation. Have a good day.